it's Julian. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make deep minimal house. In particular, we're going to be talking about how to make a full track in that very modern current style like Stussko and a lot of that style of stuff. And yeah, to go along with this video, I have the full template, the project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from the full track that you heard in the intro, available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so this is the project file for the track that you just heard. You can see we have everything laid out. It's the whole arrangement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the top down and just show you everything. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk about the arrangement stuff as well. Because, you know, again, like, it's not always just about knowing how to make the elements and how to put together an 8-bar loop. It's about how to take that idea and then turn it into a full track. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first thing we have up here would be these first stabs. So you can hear it's just these two very jazzy sort of deep house stabs. And the first thing to keep in mind here is the idea of like having two of them play together, because if you notice, like, if we just play any one on its own, it kind of becomes very obvious exactly what's happening there. But if you have the two of them, it kind of just becomes this really nice kind of blend of just nice chords like this, and it works out really well that way. And then, yeah, so you can see these are both being made just using these sampled audio stabs. And then I had called them the simpler stabs because they're in simpler. So yeah, that's like a really good thing with the style is, you know, it's not always just like putting in the chords like with MIDI and stuff. Like, these sampled stabs are going to give you a lot of vibe. Because you can hear, like, they're not playing exactly the chord, but they work really well together musically. And you're just getting like a very rich sound by combining them. And then for effects on these, we just have a bit of echo, some drum bus to fatten it up. We have this low pass filter, which you can see just kind of over the course of the whole arrangement, we're just using to kind of bring these in and out. You can see, like, at the start, it fades in really slowly. If you notice, like, it goes all the way up to bar 57, literally like a minute and 45 seconds into the track before it's all the way up there. So, like, that's something to keep in mind, you know, when you're bringing these in, you want to do it really, really slowly, because it's all about, like, how it changes over time. You're still hearing it here, but then it makes it so it's something very different by the time you get to this point in the track. And then we just have a high pass filter. And the other thing you'll notice here is that in the intro, we just have a little utility volume automation on that second stab, just to make it kind of come in so that we are just hearing that one chord at first, but then there's something kind of coming in. And yeah, then we have this piano stab. Which you can see, this is following the chord progression, essentially, that's being played by the bass line. Where it's just this D minor 7 up here. So, you know, just a very jazzy chord. And then we have A minor, and then A sharp major. So, like, pretty simple chords there, but again, it's just following what's happening with the bass line. With these style of tracks also, like, you kind of want to get a little bit more creative, and you're not going to have like a full chord progression where it's going to be very pronounced, but having that where it is kind of like a more like standard chord progression, but still very quick and stabby like this, works really well. And for this one, the sound is made with this this Mark 13 mellow piano here. And then what's happening is it's going through a low pass filter, which you can see I'm automating the low pass filter frequency all throughout the track, so it's just like constantly moving and changing, but in this nice, like, very subtle way, because it's just kind of a slightly different sound everywhere. But then we also have an LFO on the filter cutoff, so it's being moved with automation and then a fast LFO. So it's like having a slow automation and a fast automation over time. You know, that's really going to make the sound come together. And then we just have some echo and some drum bus to make it a bit fatter, and also just to give it some warmth. And then we just have a high pass filter. And yeah, and then the last thing I'll talk about with this one is just you'll notice that if we look at the stabs here, you can see See how this one and then this piano stab, they kind of play off of each other. Like when the piano stab stops, this one plays. And so that's another thing. Like when you're using different stabs like this, just kind of like knowing how to blend them and have it kind of do some call and response where one plays and then another plays, and they're kind of just playing off of each other like that. And then we have this vocal, which this is pretty simple. So this is just this nice little vocal sample, just like something very quick. You know, obviously you don't want like a whole verse or anything like that. Just something simple that's repetitive that like is very memorable and lets people know that it's your track, but at the same time, like, again, like we're not trying to make a full just something like that that's gonna sit really nicely over the groove. And so with this one, we just have it going through a bit of echo and some drum bus, which the drum bus fattens it up and makes it feel really nice and textured, but also it can really bring out that echo too, because we want this to be, you know, really spacey since it just kind of plays and then it stops. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing is just like how frequently this is happening, you know? We just kind of get it one time here, a few times here, and then that's it. Like, even though the vocal is the thing that you're probably going to remember the most about the track, usually in the actual arrangement you can see, like, it's not really going to play that many times, all things considered. Then we have this Rhodes, which sounds like this. So yeah, this is just playing this little electronic piano solo. So the way this is being written, it's not actually as crazy as you would think to write something like this. Essentially what you have to do is, well really, you know, we're just taking the scale that we're in, which in the case of this track, we're in the key of D minor. So it's just D minor scale notes, like pretty straightforward. You can see D, E, which is the 9th, F, which is the minor 3rd, G, which is the 4th, A, the 5th, a minor 7th here with C, and then another D and another E up there. Like, it's all notes that you can point to as just being like kind of main notes from the D minor scale. It's really just how you use them, you know? It's just like creating something that is at once melodic and is like melodically a cool solo, but is also rhythmic. Because it's a big part of like how this is fitting into the rhythm. And then for the sound with this one, it's made with this EP faceplate here, so just like a Rhodes type of sound, you know, just that very nice jazzy electronic piano, very 70s-esque. And then we just have some echo, some more drum bus to make this one nice and fat and textured, and then just a high pass filter, because you really don't want these to get in the way of the low end. And yeah, then we have the pads. So the way these pads are made, it's 2 layers, and then you can see what's happening is they're both playing the same chord. So what this chord is it's made using just, again, like D minor stuff. So we have D, another D, G, the 4th, an F, which would be the minor 3rd, and then an A, which is the 5th. So it's like this kind of interesting suspended chord, basically. And it just creates some nice tension, like, throughout the track, you know, just to have, like, something a bit deeper like this in the background, just playing through in different times. And you can see it's constantly building as well because we have lots of automation on it. And yeah, and something you'll see here is that there's some places where it's just this FM pad without the string, and then some places where it's both. You'll also see here the FM pad actually plays less notes in this last chord here, just to make it a little bit smaller. So that's just kind of like, you know, depending on where it is in the track. Like in some places you might say, oh, this definitely needs like, you know, more fullness. So that's where you would bring in the pad, the string, and the FM pad. But yeah, so then for the sounds on these, what's happening is this first one is made with FM. It's just a pretty simple saw wave pad where basically we have a saw wave and then a little bit of the sine wave, which is detuned, doing some FM to create kind of a more interesting texture on it. And then we just have a low pass filter which is being automated throughout the track, and that's how we're kind of like building it. And then we just have some chorus and some reverb, and then this high pass filter which automates just kind of like whenever we want it to sort of like disappear and kind of come back, like here, it just helps make it disappear because we're filtering it down with the low pass filter and up with the high pass filter. So it's kind of like making the sound disappear a little bit as we go into that drop there. And then same deal with like how it's coming in here with that. And then for the string, it's just a string ensemble here. So it just adds like a nice kind of more live element to it. The FM pad on its own without this string, you can hear like it just doesn't have that same kind of fullness to it. So this really adds a lot of life to the sound. And then that's just got a low pass filter which is doing pretty much the same automation as the low pass filter on the FM pad. A bit of reverb and then that same high pass filter automation. And then on the group of those we just have a little bit of saturation, just a little tiny bit to kind of make them come together as one pad. And then we just have a high pass filter, and that is it for the pads. So yeah, you can see that's all the melodic stuff in this track. You know, the thing about these style of tracks is like it's just about creating a few melodic things like this. You're not gonna have too much, like really no more than like 5 elements like this, or 6 elements I guess this is. But then it's just all about how that stuff is gonna move and change over time with the different arrangement stuff that you've seen. Now moving down, we have the kick and bass. So you can hear this are pretty standard, you know, just big, fat, boomy, deep, minimal kick. Very 909. And then we have the bass. So the bass is following that same basic chord progression I showed you with the piano stab up top, where it's D minor, A minor, A sharp major. So it's like these notes, essentially that's just 6 notes, but those are the only ones that are basically just playing that main chord progression. And then everything else, like all these other little notes here, it's just kind of extra stuff to sort of fill it out and just make it a little bit more bouncy. So that's how you want to write this type of bass line, is just pick out like these few basic notes that are going to be like the main groove and sort of like your main chord progression, or like the main sort of direction for the bass line, and then you just kind of go in and add in all these extra little ones. Sort of just after the fact. And the thing is like, it may seem like a lot of notes. It's not actually that many. Like once you actually go in and look at it, you can see like, you know, it's just those 6 main bass notes. And then 4 here that aren't like the main progression, so to speak. And then for the sound on this one, this is just made with operators. So what it is it's just a saw wave, a sine wave, and then another saw wave. There's no FM happening. And then I just have a low pass filter with a little bit of an envelope, you know, it's just this very fast, plucky sort of sound like that. And then we just have that going through some drum bus, a compressor, which is side chaining into the kick, and then an EQ, which is just cutting out a bit of room for the kick. And then on the group of the kick and bass, we have just a tiny amount of saturation, not a whole lot, but just a little to tie it all together. And then we have this high pass filter, and this you can see automates throughout the track. So we have not just the actual filter turning on and off, like obviously like there and there and stuff, but you also notice that the high pass automates up. So this is really important because it's kind of like what we were doing with that pad. You know, when you get rid of like the low end, like not even like the low frequencies, like sub frequencies, but just like the lower shelf of frequencies, if you just kind of make that disappear as we go into the drop, like here, then you notice when that main drop hits, it's a lot more impactful because then all of a sudden you're getting the full bass line. It's like you're going from so little to so much, versus if we just have the whole bass line there. It's not nearly as impactful when that drops. So that's the idea behind that. And something you'll also notice here is that in this little build up with the bass, I just repeated that first part of the bass line. Just kind of makes it a little bit more groovy, and then we kind of give away the full bass line once this part drops in. Yeah, then we have the clap. Pretty simple stuff. Just like a nice punchy clap. This is more of like an 808 style clap. You know, you want a little bit of like this more like type of clap for this style of house. The only thing I'll say arrangement wise with this is you'll notice usually like right before the drop it cuts out. It's like we have it here and then we lose it here because that takes away like so much, so then it becomes very, very minimal. You know, making the track even more simple right before the drop. And then we get it again in the drop. So that's again like the thing here is, you know, these style of tracks are all about taking it all away and then giving it all right back rather than like putting so much stuff right before the drop. It's actually about taking stuff out before the drop. Like this clap is a really good way to illustrate that. Then we have this percussion. And yeah, so this is all our percussion from the track. So we have like these little percussion sounds. Just a bunch of different samples there. And then we also have this operator percussion, which is just a bit of white noise inside of operator going into a bandpass filter. It's got an LFO on it. You can hear it just constantly moving that. And then we just have some echo, a little bit of auto pan, just panning it around there. And then some drum bus to fatten it up. And then on the group of all these percussions, you can see it's just a bit of saturation, a high pass filter, and then this little bit of reverb, which is actually just, you can see it's not really on that much. It's just in these build-ups here, just to make these kind of like disappear. We just get like... You hear that and it like... The idea behind this is really actually something to keep in mind, not just for minimal house, but almost all genres. It's like, essentially the idea is like, rather than adding a riser in here and adding a big whooshing sound, why not just create it by adding some reverb over top of your percussion? So that's what we're doing here, is that reverb over top of that is serving as the white noise sweep or whatever you would use there. And yeah, it's just a much more simple way of doing that. You know, it's like, if we can do that, like more with less, it's always better. So that's the idea behind that. And then we have the hi-hats. So you can see we just have a little bit of saturation on the group there. Not too much, just a little bit. You know, we don't want these to be too crunchy. That's something to keep in mind is we don't want to over crunch any of this stuff. You'll notice like there's no saturation in here that's too much. It's just a little tiny bit where it's needed. But yeah, very important to do that. And then you can see we just pretty much have like our hi-hats down here. So we have this main open hi-hat. You can see it's being shortened. And we're layering that with these two actually. But you can hear just kind of add some more punch to it. Then we have like this. And then this little shaker as well. And we also have a ride. And that's really like an arrangement thing because it just kind of comes in really just serving the purpose of like making the drums a bit more interesting at this point in the track, right? Because it's like, we're essentially like, you've heard this groove so many times with these same hi-hats. So to have this ride, and you'll see the ride only comes in really in the parts where it's just like been droning on with the same thing over and over for a while now. But it just sort of breaks it up and makes it a little bit more exciting. And yeah, so there's the hi-hats. And the last thing down here would be sort of like the transitional effects, which you'll notice there's not a whole lot of them. So the first one here is just this 909 snare. It's just like a nice punchy 909 snare, you know, doing some fills there. The thing is, you know, we're not going to want like a whole long, like, like building snare like that. Usually what you're going to do in a type of track like this is if you would use one of those building snares, it's just to do like a little, like something very sparse like that. So the idea here is we're building tension with never having to like get it all the way to like, like it's still always got some space in there. And that just comes down to like getting creative with the notes and being able to make something that isn't just going to be like full force the whole time. And then we also have these little synth effects like this one. And this one. So So these are actually both made using this synth right here. The Arturia Micro Freak. It's a synth that's really nice. Arturia sent this over to me a while ago, and I've used it in videos a little bit before. But essentially, like, with this style of track, like I was saying, you're not going to have a whole bunch of, like, reverse risers and all kinds of stuff. Even, like, crashes, like, you don't want to use that many of. So it's better to just kind of, like, create some kind of a cool synth sound or something like this that's just kind of, like, you know, it just sort of sits in there and adds that effect without being, like, a, like, rising crazy sound. So with this one, I've just taken it, and then I've got it going through some echo, and then I have this little, like, high-pass automation. And with the second one, what I did was it was like this sequence that was made inside of the synth. And this second half here, where you see that chop, essentially, like, wasn't very well quantized. Like, it was kind of out of time. So by chopping this up, I was able to put it in time. So it's like kind of taking the sound, and then you can see it's got some effects. So it's like taking the sound from, like, a live synth like this, and then working with it in the computer as audio, and, like, taking it to the next level and making it work in the track. And that's the idea with those. Again, we're not going to use a whole lot of crazy transition effects or anything too much or too, like, whooshing risers or anything like that. Just some simple little synth stuff like that is going to say everything that we need to say. And yeah. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. You can see making a track in the style is not hard, but it is hard if you can't get these basics down. So I'd recommend just focus on these basic things, and you should be able to make a full track in the style with the full arrangement and not be so stuck with just an 8-bar loop every time. So yeah, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much for the support, guys. You know, when you get this template, not only do you get a great template of literally a full track in the style on the same professional quality level as the pros, but it's also just a really great way to support me. You know, I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube alone, but with this $10 full track template, you can help support me and keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every day. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.